Hey YouTube, strap yourself in. This might be on the longer side of my videos and maybe more on the rambly side. Some of the feedback I've gotten lately is that I should try to have a better outline for my content, and so I don't stumble and so much. And I agree, and I think that's good feedback, and I'm going to try not to be lazy in the future and put together a more oriented approach to the things that I want to cover. With that being said, today I already did a video. This is my second video today, and I changed my shirt just to make it look like maybe it wasn't the same day or something. I don't know, even though I'm telling you right now. But I was sort of struck with some inspiration, and I have some extra time on my hands, so I figured I would just make this video with maybe as little editing as possible, hopefully. But I want to pretty much just like speak unscripted and from my heart, and so I don't want to go by an organized structure so much. And let me know if that's something you appreciate or not. Leave me a comment. Tell me I'm a rambling idiot or not. But it occurred to me today. I was at an event talking to some people, and I brought up the idea of Bitcoin. And shout out to the one guy I know watching this who probably knows what I'm talking about. But I was asked questions about it that I guess I take for granted that maybe people just are on the same page with me when they're not. I guess I'm guilty of being so absorbed into the world I'm absorbed in that I think things are obvious when maybe they're not. And I see, guys, I have a little thing of water here for me. My mouth gets dry when I'm prepared to talk for a long time. But so I was asked the question. I was asked a few follow-up questions, and I thought it was maybe just one of those things I say in passing, or that I think people just understand, and I guess it's possible that they don't. And I think specifically what I was referencing was when saying why purchase Bitcoin. And one of the responses commonly cited is it's a hedge against inflation, and it helps preserve your purchasing power. And I was asked, what does this mean, preserve your purchasing power? And I said, well, it took me a little bit to think about, because I thought maybe that was straightforward, but I guess maybe it's not. And so if I ever in a video and I say something that I don't think to explain, and anybody is ever left confused, leave a comment and let me know. I'm sure it happens without me noticing. But the best explanation at the time that I could think of was, well, people say preserve your purchasing power because it's not like you can say, I want to preserve my cash. You can have $5,000 today and $5,000 in 1970, and you preserve the number of dollar bills you have, but that doesn't preserve your purchasing power. Inflation robs you of that. And and that was the best kind of on the spot explanation I could think of. And even that, I don't know how well that went over. So let me know. Does that work for you guys? So, but anyways, like I said, I went, and then it made me think a little bit more about my explanation of how I got involved into crypto. I think I touched on that in the channel earlier, but not so much how I settled on the idea of it, I suppose. Why I think Bitcoin is a sound investment. But yeah, why I'm a Bitcoiner versus why I don't think Ethereum is going to be anywhere near the same strength of a cryptocurrency as Bitcoin is. Just why I guess I've never really taken the time to explain things. I suppose one, I take it that maybe you're watching these videos because you've already reached the same conclusion, but two, I kind of felt were self-evident, but maybe they aren't. And I've said that 4 times now. So like I said, guys, strap yourself in. This is going to be maybe a long and rambling video because I don't know where I'm going to start. I don't know where I'm going to stop. But if you haven't already, check out the links in the description below. And if you use any of them to sign up for those services, we both get free crypto, and that's pretty cool. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, I am offering $25 good for new subscribers, and that's pretty cool. So go ahead and sign up, and I will give you $25 good. And when I get to 100 subscribers, I'm hoping to give away $100 good to one of the subscribers. And even a little further out, guys, if I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'm planning on giving away 1,000 Crow CRO, which at the current time, I think Crow is priced at oh, it fell out of the top 35. I don't know where it is. Maybe 11 cents or so. But by the time I'm at 1,000 subscribers, who knows what it'll be. So if you're one of the 1 through 1,000, maybe you can get 1,000 Crow. I'm not going to edit that out. So anyways, why Bitcoin? I guess the rational place to start is what's happening to our economy. No, maybe that's not the right way to start. Maybe the real backdrop is to understand how our currency works or fails to work. I throw around terms like fiat currency, and honestly, it's just easy because most people in the world understand what fiat. Most people in the crypto world understand fiat. But I'll admit right off the bat, I didn't know what fiat currency was until a few years ago. So that's maybe one place I'll start with. Fiat currency basically just references any currency that's not pegged to a standard. So like the US dollar used to be pegged to the gold standard. And when we came off of that, we became a fiat currency. And so the reason that this is important is because statistically speaking, when you look back on the hundreds and possibly thousands of years of data that we have, I mean, all the way back to like the Roman Empire, for financial collapse, your governments and countries that utilize fiat currency, usually the currency fails. And I think the statistic often cited is something in the neighborhood of 99% of fiat currencies fail within 100 years. That does not mean all fiat currencies fail, and that does not mean all of them will fail. But it's relevant when you're talking about even if you were to say the majority of them, let alone in the 90s or high 90s. I mean, that's a sobering statistic when you take into account that the US dollar has been a fiat currency since the 1970s. And if I do some quick math here, that's about 50 some odd years that we have been fiat. And so statistically speaking, within the next 50 years, it is not only conceivable, but mathematically likely that the US dollar could fail, which is in our lifetimes. Now, the US is exceptional in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were exceptional in how long we can make the US dollar stretch out. But the reality is that we are still a very young country. We have a lot of room to mess up. We've gotten a really great head start because we have abundant natural resources, lots of space, and we kind of stumbled into glory in one way or another. But that being said, if we make stupid decisions, we're still going to have to deal with the ramifications. And when you the reason these failures occur is because when it used to be that if you had a dollar bill in your hand, and you wanted to go get a bit of gold from the bank, you could bring your dollar note to the bank and say, "I want $1 worth of gold," and they would give it to you. Now that's not the case. It even says it's not redeemable for gold. It's only legal for debts. So now you can't do that. And so when you come off that standard and say, we don't need to do this anymore, it doesn't matter how much gold we have sitting around in Fort Knox. We'll print out 20 of these dollar bills. Actually, we'll print out $20 bills for the same amount of gold for $1, maybe. That's how it starts, right? And then you don't even need that gold at all. Then it's just, we can print money endlessly out of thin air, and it's not pegged to anything. It's no different than monopoly money. And so if you're familiar with the concept of like supply and demand, when you inflate the supply of dollars, they become worth less and less. Not worthless. I mean, I suppose worthless. But they become less. They become worth less. And that is what we call inflation. And I think a lot of us have grown up with the understanding that this is a normal part of a functioning economy because we haven't known anything else. And you can't be blamed for that because a school doesn't necessarily tell you that the economy you're born into is one of very shaky foundations. You're not going to learn that in school. And two, you're talking about cycles that can span many generations, and it's kind of the frog in the boiling water effect. You are not going to notice it very much. If you're my age, you might nostalgically think back to, when these things were a thing, a phone booth. Calls used to cost a dime in a phone booth when these were around. And then they cost a quarter. And then at some point, I think before they went extinct, they ended up costing 50 cents. Am I wrong? Somebody correct me on that. I actually don't remember that one too much. I just remember phone calls going up and up and up. And this is pretty much everything in life that you need to function and exist. All these costs start going up. That's inflation. And generally it's slow and you don't notice it until just one day you wake up and phone calls are a little bit more, right? But it's not something that is going to put the pressure on you so much that you are starving to death. It will become more uncomfortable over time. And generally, wages have not kept up with inflation. Sure, you get cost of life adjustments sometimes. Sure, the minimum wage goes up sometimes. but generally speaking, the rate of inflation outpaces this quite a bit. And this is significant because it's often called a hidden tax, inflation, a hidden tax, or at least it is in the Bitcoin circles. And because when you think about it, this is more or less what it is, effectively a tax. When the Fed, okay, down the rabbit hole. And most people think that the Fed is a branch. Most people think that the way our money works is that the government makes it and sends it out. And that's not necessarily the case. The government borrows it, and they have to pay it back with interest. And when they have to pay it back with interest, and they have to borrow more money to pay that back, there's this endless cycle of borrowing money and having to pay more money back, and borrowing more money to pay more money back. And they can only get so far with taxes, and people don't like taxes. If you try to raise taxes to pay your debt down, people get very unhappy. And because politicians are generally in office for very short terms, unless you're Congress, and they have to win popularity contests like Instagram influencers in order to get into office, they do not want to do things that are unpopular, like raising taxes. Republican, Democrat, whatever. One might be more comfortable with a certain percentage, but generally speaking, not as much as is needed to pay what is needed to be paid. And so instead of raising taxes to pay their debts, because they borrow money instead of creating it, they inflate their debt away. So let's say, just for math purposes, they have borrowed $100 and they need to pay that back. And if they pay that back today, they're going to have to pay back $100 of today's value. Well, if they carry that debt into the future and they devalue the currency, so, okay, let's say I have $100 on hand, and I don't want to just give that away to pay the debt, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to operate on this money and maybe print a little bit more into existence, borrow some more into existence, and then I'll have $1,000. Well, the money that I've brought into existence devalues all of the money that I had in hand, but the debt that I'm paying back with future worthless dollars is now being paid off with inflated currency. So they kind of sneak that little trick in there. And actually, I don't even know if it's sneaking so much, because most people know that this is what's happening. When you look at the deficit, what the government owes being in the trillions of dollars, I don't even know what it is anymore, to be honest with you. It's some ungodly number. They can't pay that back with taxes. There's no way. They can't pay that back. They have to devalue the currency and inflate it away. Let's say they owe $14 trillion. Well, they're going to make $14 trillion worthless. So they're going to print more and more and more and more money and pay that back on the backs of future Americans and steal out of their pockets. Steal out of your pockets in the future and steal out of the pockets of future Americans. And let me give one thing straight, by the way, too. I am not by any means anti-American. I'm not anti-government. I know it might seem like it. I just am I am not one to sugarcoat what is really happening. You know, I recognize that there are far worse things happening in the world than inflation, right? I mean, fundamentally, it's a very serious problem, but at the end of the day, there are big things going on. But I don't want to come across as some anti-American government hater. I'm not. At the same time, you know, I wouldn't want to live in India. So maybe I'll edit that part out. I'm not anti-Indian either. I think they still have the plague over there. I don't know. It's very crowded. I'm not anti-Indian. I'm not anti anything, honestly. I'm anti-effery. That's what I wanted to say in the first place. I don't want to edit my sailor's mouth out. I really don't want to edit this at all. And I don't even want to review it to edit it because this is going to be a long video. 21 minutes. Yeah, it's not the longest. We'll see how I feel. So why Bitcoin? Okay. Fiat currency, economic backdrop. Well, inflation is something that has been happening in the best of times. That's something we've had since the 70s. That is just something that is what happens to get the debt down. But especially now. So the fiat currency has already been set up to failure from the start. But the backdrop of, I'm told I cannot say these words, so I will just reference the large worldwide catastrophe that we have recently experienced with a certain illness. When you shut down everything and you spread money from the sky, like it were being dropped by a helicopter, we call that helicopter money, and printed out of thin air at an accelerated pace, it just takes the inevitable and it pushes it more into the here and now. And so it becomes more urgent to find something that protects you from having what little money you might have saved in your life becoming more and more worthless. The real painful part of the process that's happening right now, people talk about a K-shaped recovery, is that wealthy people tend to become wealthier and poor people tend to become poorer. Poor people tend to make money from labor, and labor has only so much power available to it in order to produce income. You can only work so many hours in a day, and generally your salary is only so much. When you are wealthy, you tend to make money with money. You make investments, and investments work around the clock for you and take zero effort. You can research, but wealth is a self-generating beast. So when assets appreciate in price, like let's say you own property, you own a house, and when inflation occurs, it pushes the price of everything to the sky, like we see happening now. Lumber's going up, that makes houses become more pricey. Everything goes up in price. And that's good for you because your house, the value of your house, you own that, that's appreciating. Now, if you're trying to buy a house, that's another story for right now. But so, generally speaking, this K-shaped recovery, it doesn't hurt people who are already wealthy. As long as they smartly preserve their wealth then in investments, hedges against inflation, hard assets, then they are going to be just fine. And the 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 gap between the economic elite and the poor becomes more and more pronounced. And generally, when you look historically speaking, the further this gap between the poor and the wealthy is pushed, you have more and more civil unrest. And this can lead to a lot of waterfall effects. I'm not going to make any conclusions about... I just realized my computer's very dusty. Airflow is important. Yeah, the 1% becomes the 0.01%, becomes the 0.001%, and it makes people very unhappy. And people who are unhappy and have nothing to live for or lose, they buck the system, and you see a lot of downstream effects from that. And you can see that that's nothing new. You can see that all throughout history. And that generally tends to be the end of something and the start of something new. So, again, why Bitcoin? I think I've touched on it before. Bitcoin has a capped finite supply of 21... Hello, little dog. 21 million, and that's all there will ever be. And most likely, not even that will be available, because people have lost Bitcoin, people have burned Bitcoin. So you have a thing that, for the first time, is perfectly finite and cannot be inflated. Historically, gold has been a good hedge against inflation and a good store of value, and that's because it is very scarce. It's not perfectly scarce. You know, Elon Musk wants to mine it from space. You can always find new gold mines. The technology for refinement increases every year. There are a lot of reasons why gold is not perfectly scarce. It is scarce. And so Bitcoin becomes kind of a gold 2.0, an improved version of gold. Because not only is it programmably scarce, it's digital, it's internet native. It is very easy to send money to somebody in another part of the world. When, if I were to try to do that in gold, it would be very difficult and very costly, and it would be a very long process to physically ship gold to another country, and not even to mention what kind of checks there would be at borders, what kind of customs you're talking about. Bitcoin is permissionless. It's nationless. It just goes, and the fee to the network might be a couple bucks, depending on the size that you're sending. So it has advantages over gold. It's better than gold. It's exciting. It's something that we've never seen before, and that has the possibility to change so much that is wrong with the world. When you think about a lot of the reasons that we go to war, or why there is so much income inequality and there's an economic disparity between the real wealthy and elite and the disappearing middle class and the increasing amount of poverty, and why things like Wall Street bets is a thing. You know, why Occupy Wall Street was a thing. Why these movements are happening? It's because people are getting fed up, and in a lot of ways, Bitcoin is the release valve. I can feel myself losing a little bit of direction right now, and this is a half-hour long video, and I would be surprised if anybody even actually made it this far. Comment if you have. And I think I've touched on some of the more basic background elements as to why Bitcoin, why not Ethereum. That's another story. Why not Dogecoin? That's another story. The short version is that every other cryptocurrency is trying to do something. Bitcoin has already done it, and it is not the same thing. Bitcoin is a secure, complete cryptocurrency that is a store of value and maybe one day a currency. Ethereum aims to be something different. Proof of stake is something completely different versus proof of work. I'm not going to get into that. Let me know if you want me to. I probably will do a video eventually about what proof of work is versus proof of stake. And maybe that video will come out before proof of stake is a thing. Yeah, maybe that feels like a good video. Let me know. What do you think about this video? I'm going to try not to edit it.
Documentary has had a great deal of interest from overseas broadcasters. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, CBS in the United States.
No.
Ma'am?
I don't think so.
Right. I gather the BBC plans to